would chase. They thought your silence would crack first. They thought your heart would run toward confusion just to keep the connection alive. They thought that if they pulled back, delayed, or acted distant, you would come after them and prove how much you cared. But you did not. And that is exactly why this reading feels so charged, because what they expected to be a game they could control turned into a mirror showing them your self-respect, your restraint, your refusal to perform, longing for someone who is busy testing it. The first card appearing here is the Seven of Swords. This card reveals strategy, indirect behavior, a move made quietly without emotional honesty standing beside it. So yes, this person may have pulled away on purpose, gone quiet on purpose, acted uncertain on purpose. Not necessarily because they felt nothing, but because they wanted to see what your response would be. Would you chase? Would you panic? Would you reach harder? Would you prove that they still had influence over your heart? The Seven of Swords says this was not clean energy. It was someone trying to gather reassurance without asking for it directly. The next card appearing here is the Queen of Swords. This is your energy, and it explains why they are shaken. Now, the Queen of Swords sees what is happening. She reads the silence. She recognizes the difference between genuine distance and manipulative distance, and instead of collapsing into it, she becomes still, not cold, not empty. Just clear. That changed everything because they expected movement and they met dignity. The next card appearing here is the Hanged Man. This card says they are now suspended in the very stillness they created, waiting, watching, reconsidering, because silence feels very different when you expect the other person to break it and they do not. So this person may now be forced to look at you differently. Not as someone who will abandon self-respect to preserve access, but as someone who knows their worth and will not chase confusion just because it feels emotionally tempting. The next card appearing here is the Five of Wands. This card shows inner conflict. Their pride may be fighting with their feelings. Their plan may be fighting with reality. Their ego may still want to act unaffected, while their emotions are clearly much more stirred up than they intended, because the test did not produce the result they wanted. Instead of reassurance, it created uncertainty. Instead of control, it created tension. And now they may be arguing silently with themselves about what your lack of chasing actually means. The next card appearing here is the Page of Swords. This says they are paying attention now, trying to read you, trying to understand whether you truly do not care or whether you simply refuse to play. So this person may now be observing your energy in a way they did not before. Looking for signs, trying to detect softness, trying to find proof that the bond still matters to you. Because when the test failed, curiosity got louder. The next card appearing here is the Moon. And this is where their confusion deepens, because the Moon says they no longer feel sure of what you feel, or even fully sure of what they themselves feel. Their own behavior may have backfired emotionally. Instead of making them feel secure, it may have made them more anxious. Instead of getting a clear response, they got mystery. Now your silence may feel louder to them than any emotional pursuit would have. The final card appearing here is the Tower, and this is the shock. The emotional jolt, the cracking of the assumption they were standing on, because the Tower says something inside them has been shaken by your response. Or more exactly, by your refusal to give the response they expected. You not chasing may have forced them to confront a truth they were not ready for, that you cannot be manipulated into proving your worth, that your stillness can carry more power than their distance ever did. So the message of this reading becomes very clear. They tested you to see if you would chase. And when you did not, it changed the emotional landscape completely. Now they are confused. Now they are watching. Now they are trying to understand why your energy stayed so steady when they expected it to rush toward them. And the deeper truth may be landing harder than they want to admit. You did not chase because your heart is not a toy for another person's insecurity. You did not chase because your energy recognizes when silence is being used as bait. And now the person who thought they were controlling the situation may be the one losing their footing. Because the lesson did not land on you, it landed on them, much more painfully than they expected. Now they feel more than they ever planned. Something turns here and it feels almost ironic because the very distance they created to measure your feelings is now the distance making them feel everything more intensely. They expected your silence to be temporary. They expected your restraint to break. They expected one message, one emotional reaction, one sign of pursuit. But when none of that arrived, the situation stopped feeling like a test and started feeling like loss. The first card appearing here is the Four of Pentacles. This card says they are holding on now, not loosely, not casually, tightly. They may be holding on to your last words, your last energy, the memory of the connection before they complicated it. Because the Four of Pentacles is what happens when someone realizes they may have pushed too far and now does not know how to recover the emotional ground they thought would still be waiting for them. The next card appearing here is the Nine of Swords because whatever confidence they had at the start of this test, it is not sitting comfortably in them now. The Nine of Swords is restless thought, late night replay. The emotional exhaustion of wondering whether they misjudged the entire situation. They may be thinking, why didn't they chase? Did I go too far? Did I make them stop caring? Did they see straight through me? The next card appearing here is the King of Wands. A strong ego, a person who may like feeling desired, a person who may be used to creating reaction, and then reading that reaction as proof of importance. So when your energy did not rise to meet the game, their pride may have taken a hit, but now they may be the one feeling impacted. The next card appearing here is the High Priestess. Now your silence becomes even more powerful because the High Priestess does not explain herself just to soothe another person's anxiety. She knows, she watches, she stays connected to truth without rushing to prove what she feels. That may be exactly the energy you embodied, whether intentionally or not, and that energy can be deeply unsettling for someone who expected emotional noise. Because instead of getting access, they got mystery. Instead of getting reassurance, they got depth. And now your quiet may feel far more intense to them than any visible reaction would have. The next card appearing here is the Five of Cups. This is where regret starts entering, not full heartbreak yet, but regret. The uncomfortable awareness that they may have created emotional distance with someone who actually mattered to them. The Five of Cups says they may now be looking back at the moment they pulled away, or acted strange, or waited too long, and seeing it differently now. At the time, it may have felt strategic. Now, it may feel foolish. The next card appearing here is the Page of Wands. This card says the urge to break the silence may be growing. They may want to send something, say something, create a moment that restarts the energy, not because they feel calm, but because they do not. The Page of Wands is restless, curious, impulsive when the emotional tension becomes too much. So if they suddenly try to appear, reopen contact, or say something a little bolder than before, this card explains why. The final card appearing here is the Wheel of Fortune. This says the situation has turned. The dynamic is no longer what they thought it would be. The person who expected to be chased is now the person wondering what your silence means. The person who expected to stay emotionally above the situation is now feeling pulled deeper into it. And the message of the second part is very clear. Your refusal to chase changed the power of the connection. It showed them that your heart does not move on command. It showed them that your energy is not easily manipulated by distance. It showed them that emotional maturity looks different from emotional panic. And now they are the ones sitting with uncertainty. They are the one wondering what you feel. They are the one feeling the weight of what they set in motion. They are the one realizing that the game may have cost them more emotional ground than they ever meant to risk. Part of what shakes them most may be the realization that your silence had dignity in it, not punishment, not drama. Dignity, and dignity is hard to argue with because it exposes childish behavior without needing to speak loudly at all. That is why the confusion feels so strong around them now, because they expected a chase, and instead they met your standards. They expected proof of attachment, and instead they got a lesson in self-respect. And somewhere inside, they know it. That lesson may be staying with them longer than they wanted because your calm answered the game more clearly than words could. A different truth begins to surface here, and it feels more personal, more revealing, more emotional than what came before, because now the cards are not only showing what they did, they are showing what your response did to them. The first card appearing here is the Six of Wands. This card says they expected validation. They expected your reaction to confirm their importance. They expected your pursuit to feed their confidence and make them feel secure in the connection. But when that validation never came, something shifted. The Six of Wands in this reading becomes the need to feel chosen. And now they may be wondering why they are the one left wanting proof instead. The next card appearing here is the Eight of Swords. And this card shows mental spiraling. They may be trapped in their own thoughts now, replaying everything, trying to figure out if your silence means you stopped caring, or if it means you simply refuse to play their game. That uncertainty may be haunting them more than they expected, because when someone creates distance on purpose, they usually imagine they can control the outcome. But once the outcome begins feeling uncertain, control turns into anxiety very quickly. The next card appearing here is the Queen of Pentacles. This is another reflection of your energy grounded, self-respecting, not easily pulled into emotional chaos. The Queen of Pentacles does not chase confusion just to feel temporarily reassured. She stays with herself. She protects her peace. She lets people reveal who they are instead of rushing to fix what they broke. That may be exactly what shook them. Because your response may have shown them that your heart is valuable enough not to run after someone who is busy testing it. The next card appearing here is the Five of Swords. Now the emotional consequences deepen. Because this card says they may be realizing that what felt like strategy at first now feels like self-sabotage. The Five of Swords is what happens when someone wins the moment but loses something more important in the process. They may have wanted control, but what they got was distance. They may have wanted proof, but what they got was silence. They may have wanted you to chase, but what they found instead was the uncomfortable possibility that they pushed too hard. The next card appearing here is the Hermit. This card says they are reflecting now, privately, quietly, more deeply than they are letting anyone know. The Hermit is not casual thought. It is emotional self-examination. So this person may be thinking about why they needed the test in the first place, why they could not simply communicate, why they tried to create a reaction instead of asking honestly for closeness. And the more they reflect, the more your response may start making painful sense to them. The next card appearing here is the Knight of Cups. This is important because even after all this confusion, the emotional current still wants to move toward you. The Knight of Cups says their heart may still want to soften, still want to reach, still want to come forward with something more sincere than what they showed before. So the test may have failed, but the feelings did not disappear. If anything, the cards say those feelings may now be even harder for them to ignore. The final card appearing here is the Justice card, and this is the truth landing. Justice says your silence was not random. It was balanced. It was fair. It was the consequence of being met with uncertainty when you deserved honesty. And on some level, they may know that now. So the message of this third part is very clear. They expected you to chase, but instead they met the truth of your self-respect. They expected reassurance, but instead they got reflection. They expected emotional noise, but instead they got a response so calm that it forced them to look at themselves. And that is what may be shaking them most. There is one more layer here too. Part of the confusion may be coming from the fact that they are now the one feeling exposed. When they created the test, they thought your feelings would be the thing placed under pressure, but now their own feelings are the ones being revealed. Their insecurity, their pride, their need for control, their desire to still matter to you. All of it may be showing up more clearly because you did not react the way they expected. That is why the energy feels so unsettled around them now. Because your silence may have said something they were not prepared to hear, that love without respect does not get chased, and that truth may be changing the way they see the entire connection. Now they sit with the silence, and for the first time, it may be teaching them what your value really is. Now, something becomes impossible for them to ignore here, and it feels less like a game now and more like emotional consequence, because once a person pulls away to test someone and the other person does not run after them, a very uncomfortable question starts growing in the silence. What if I push too far? The first card appearing here is the Four of Cups. This card says they may be staring at the emotional outcome now and not liking what they see. What once felt like control may now feel flat, unsatisfying, and heavy. The Four of Cups is what happens when someone realizes the reaction they were waiting for never came, and now they are left alone with the stillness they created. They may be wondering why your energy feels so far away now, why you did not rush in, why you did not try harder, why you seemed to keep your balance while they were expecting emotional movement. The next card appearing here is the Page of Swords. This says the silence did not make them lose interest, it made them pay attention, more closely, more nervously, more often than they probably want to admit. The Page of Swords is someone watching for signs, reading little details, trying to understand what the other person is feeling without directly asking. So they may now be studying your energy, your behavior, your tone, trying to figure out whether your silence means closure or whether it means you simply refuse to reward confusion. The next card appearing here is the Nine of Wands. Now, we see defensiveness because even though they are unsettled, part of them may still be trying to protect their pride. They may not want to admit how much your lack of chasing affected them. They may act guarded, stubborn, or emotionally tense. But the Nine of Wands says that tension is proof. Proof that the situation got under their skin, proof that your response mattered, proof that the connection is not emotionally neutral for them anymore. The next card appearing here is the High Priestess. This is powerful because it says your quiet held more power than their strategy. The High Priestess does not explain herself to be understood. She does not overreact to prove she cares. She lets silence reveal what noise cannot. That may be exactly what happened here. You did not chase. You did not collapse. You did not hand them the reassurance they were trying to pull from you indirectly. And now your silence may feel mysterious, deep, and impossible for them to fully read. That mystery is part of what is shaking them. The next card appearing here is the Five of Cups. This is where regret begins becoming emotional, not dramatic regret on the outside, but real regret inside. The kind that appears when someone realizes they may have damaged the warmth of a connection by treating it like a test instead of a truth. They may now miss the ease that existed before, miss the access, miss the softness. And the deeper truth may be this: they did not expect to miss you this much after trying to control the situation. The next card appearing here is the Knight of Cups. So yes, despite the confusion, despite the pride, despite the awkward silence, the heart still wants to move toward you. This card says there may still be a very real emotional impulse to come closer, to soften, to speak more honestly than before. Because once someone realizes the other person is not going to chase, they are often forced to choose, stay in pride, or move in sincerity. The final card appearing here is the Wheel of Fortune. This says the dynamic has changed. You not chasing shifted the story. It turned the mirror around. It changed who feels uncertain. It changed who is watching. It changed who is now forced to sit with the emotional outcome. And that is why the message of this part is so clear. They are shook because your silence did not look like weakness. It looked like self-respect. They are confused because your stillness did not confirm what they believed about your heart. It challenged it. And now, the person who expected to be pursued may be the one slowly realizing that if they want this connection, they may have to be the one who steps forward, honestly. Because your dignity answered the test more clearly than any chase ever could. There is a layer, and it matters. Part of what unsettles them most is that your response exposed the difference between attention and access. They may have had your attention before. They may have felt your presence, but now access feels reduced. And once access changes, people discover what they were taking for granted. That is the ache around them now. Not only pride, not only confusion, loss of closeness. And the silence may be forcing them to admit, that what they called a test may have cost them more than they expected. And it feels like the moment where their pride can no longer fully protect them from what they are feeling, because by now the silence is not only confusing them, it is humbling them. The first card appearing here is the Six of Swords. This card says their mind is trying to move toward calm, but their emotions are not moving that easily. They may want relief. They may want clarity. They may want to stop replaying the moment where they expected you to chase and instead met your stillness. But the Six of Swords says emotional understanding takes longer than the ego wants it to. So even if they are trying to tell themselves to let it go, part of them is still traveling through the lesson. The next card appearing here is the King of Cups. This is important because it says there are real feelings underneath all of this. Not only bruised pride, not only confusion, real feeling. The King of Cups may not express everything quickly, but what he feels runs deep. So this person may now be discovering that your lack of chasing did not make them care less. It made the feeling clearer. Because once the noise disappeared, what remained was truth. The next card appearing here is the Five of Pentacles. Now we see the emotional discomfort more plainly. They may feel left out of the warmth they once assumed would still be available to them. Not because you were cruel, not because you played games back, but because you stopped offering energy where respect was missing. The Five of Pentacles is the ache of realizing that what felt emotionally accessible before now feels further away, and that distance may be teaching them something they did not want to learn this way. The next card appearing here is the Knight of Wands. This card shows impulse rising, restlessness, the desire to do something before the distance grows colder. They may have moments where they want to break the silence suddenly, to say something bold, to pull the energy back toward motion, because the Knight of Wands does not sit comfortably in emotional uncertainty for long. So yes, part of them may want to act, not necessarily because they feel steady, because they feel the tension. The next card appearing here is the Justice card. And this is where the reading becomes very clear. Justice says your response was balanced. You did not overreact. You did not collapse. You did not abandon yourself to prove your heart. You answered confusion with self-respect. And now the emotional scales are correcting. Because the person who created the test is now the person facing the outcome of it. The next card appearing here is the Hermit. This says they may be processing all of this more privately than anyone knows, thinking, reflecting, revisiting what they did and why they did it. The Hermit is the card of painful self-awareness when someone can no longer hide from their own behavior. So this person may be realizing that what they wanted was reassurance, but the way they went about getting it may have pushed the connection into distance instead. The final card appearing here is the Ace of Cups. And this matters so much because it says the heart is still open, still affected, still carrying emotion. Your silence did not kill the feeling. It stripped it down to what was real. So the message of this part becomes very clear. They are not only shook because you did not chase. They are shook because your response made them confront their own emotional truth, that they cared more than they admitted, that they wanted your reassurance more than they realized, that they may have tested the connection, only to find out they were the one far more emotionally invested than they planned to be. There is one more layer here too. Part of what may sting them most is that your silence had integrity in it. It did not beg, it did not manipulate, it did not try to force them into clarity. It simply stood still and let their own actions speak back to them. That kind of stillness can be unforgettable because it becomes a mirror. And in that mirror, they may now be seeing the difference between someone who plays with emotion and someone who protects it. That is why the energy feels so serious now, because what they thought would measure your feelings ended up exposing theirs more than they wanted, more than they expected, and much more deeply than they are comfortable admitting even now. And because of that, the silence may still be echoing inside them, not as emptiness, but as pressure to understand. Pressure to be honest, pressure to be honest, pressure to decide whether they will keep hiding behind pride or finally come forward with something real. The test is over now. What remains is the truth of how much your absence matters to them. And the final energy of this reading feels very clear. What they thought would give them answers ended up exposing their own heart, because when they pulled back, went quiet, or acted distant, They expected your emotions to rush in and make everything obvious. They expected proof. They expected pursuit. They expected you to close the gap they created, but you did not. And that changed everything. The first card appearing here is the Two of Cups. This card says the bond itself was real enough that your silence did not make them detach. It made them feel the Two of Cups is emotional recognition, mutual importance, the kind of connection that cannot be handled carelessly without consequence. So when you did not chase, it did not erase the bond in them. It made them realize how much they were relying on your emotional response to feel secure. The next card appearing here is the Moon. This card says confusion is still very alive around them, not because your energy is unclear, but because your silence forced them to sit with what they can no longer control. They may not know whether you are protecting yourself, losing interest, or simply choosing peace over chaos, and that uncertainty may be much heavier for them than they expected. The next card appearing here is the Six of Cups. This is where memory begins speaking louder. They may be thinking about how the connection felt before the test, before the silence, before the emotional tension, a softness, an ease, the feeling that your care was there and that they could reach it whenever they wanted. Now that access feels different, and that difference may be hitting them more deeply than they planned for. The next card appearing here is the Five of Cups. This card brings regret, quiet regret. The kind that appears when someone realizes they may have damaged something warm by trying to measure it instead of honoring it. They may now be looking back at their own behavior and seeing it differently, not as clever, not as protective, but as something that may have pushed away the very closeness they were trying to confirm. The next card appearing here is the Knight of Cups. And this matters because despite everything, their heart still wants movement toward you. They may still want to soften, still want to reach, still want to come forward in a way that is more sincere than what they showed before. Because once the silence stripped everything back, what remained may have been real feeling. And real feeling usually does not stay comfortable behind ego forever. The next card appearing here is Justice. This card says your response was fair, balanced. Honest in its own way. You did not chase confusion. You did not abandon your self-respect to comfort someone else's insecurity. And now the emotional scales are correcting. The one who created the distance is now the one sitting inside the emotional consequences of it. The final card appearing here is the Sunday. This is the Truth card. The clear card, the one that says the lesson has landed. They are shook, not because you were cold. They are shook because you were calm. Because your stillness revealed strength, because your silence revealed boundaries, because your dignity revealed what they were really doing, and it did not invite the game to continue. So the message of this final part is very clear. They tested you to see if you'd chase, and now they are confused because your heart did not move the way they expected. You did not panic. You did not prove yourself. You did not hand them reassurance at the cost of your peace. And in that response, they saw something real. They saw that your love is not weak, that your energy is not easily manipulated, that your presence carries value, even when it says nothing at all. There is one last layer here, part of what may stay with them. The longest is not just that you didn't chase. It is the way you didn't chase with composure, with self-respect. With an emotional steadiness that exposed the difference between genuine love and someone trying to test it for comfort. That is why this still echoes inside them, because they wanted proof of your feelings, and instead they got a lesson in your worth. And once someone sees that clearly, they rarely forget it. Even now, while they try to understand it, the truth keeps pressing on them. Your silence was not emptiness, it was discernment. Your distance was not weakness, it was wisdom. And the person who thought they were measuring your feelings may now be